सूरा सो पहचानिए जो लड़े दीन के हेत, पुरजा पुरजा कट मरे कबो ना छाड़ो खेत। कोई भी जहाज ले आओ, हिंदुस्तानी पायलट को बिठाओ उसके अंदर, and you will see magic.
Today it is my honor and pleasure to welcome Air Commodore A.S Bahal.
I wanted to explore the world, and what best way than the armed forces?
When did this all start changing, and how have we been able to do it so quickly?
We are going to move ahead very rapidly because it is the Indian brains that work everywhere in the world.
We did have another airman, which was Abhinandan, who was actually brought back in, I think, 60 hours or less.
Our government is pretty good that way. They threaten them. छड़ दो नहीं तो छड़ांगे नहीं.
इंडिया से पंगा आप नहीं ले सकते.
हाँ, इंडिया से पंगा आप नहीं ले सकते.
Operation Balakot, in a way, was historic.
Here we are exercising our political will to say हम तुम्हारे देश के अंदर घुस रहे हैं और घुस के मार रहे हैं और बता रहे हैं कि आगे कुछ किया तो फिर घुस के मारेंगे.
I think the world, stood up and took notice that this is now a changed India.
It's the fourth largest air force in the world, but in my mind, it is the most professional and best air force and loving leaders inside it.
One quality every Air Force officer must have.
Nidarta.
One word that defines life in uniform.
Honor.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Let's Chat with GB. Today's podcast, we have an exceptional officer and a gentleman, someone who served in the Indian Air Force for 32 years before choosing the path of education and empowering millions post that as well. Someone who we see often on TV, on top panels. He's at broadcasts and on podcasts. And today it is my honor and pleasure to welcome Air Commodore A.S Bahal. Welcome, sir. Welcome to Let's Chat with GB.
Jai Hind, Gaurav ji, Jai Hind, and thank you very much for calling me to this wonderful channel.
It is a pleasure to have you here, and we've been following, your work and your commentary, and I just think that our viewers and listeners from around, the country and the world will really love what you have to share with us today.
Thank you, sir.
So let's go back to the early days. What was it that made you choose the path of joining the Indian Air Force?
My dad, strict guy. Mm-hmm. He was a military guy. Mm-hmm. He was from the artillery regiment, right, but the one which dealt with AD artillery. That time there used to be no air defense artillery. Right. So it was merged with the original artillery branch itself. Right. So he used to get lots of books on different aircrafts, their types, fighters, transports, helicopters. And the book used to say, which angle the aircraft will look how. It was so beautiful that it got me entangled. Ye wala fighter to udana hai. And that's how it came about. And then one day, he later on from army, he went to Food Corporation of India and he was looking after Gujarat. Right. So we were staying very close to Jamnagar airfield. Right. And there were MiG-21s landing. And when I used to see them come and land at 300, 320 kilometers per hour and the sound they made, isko to udana hai. And that's what got me into the National Defense Academy. And I've never looked back. And if you make a cut here anywhere, you will not see red. It'll be blue blood.
I love it. Yeah. That's super. Yeah, and I remember you mentioning on one of your podcasts that while you were at Jamnagar, you were just sold that this is what I have to do. And there was no plan B in your mind at all.
No plan B, sir.
Yeah. And there is a test that, when someone comes into the Air Force, you have to take. Now, sitting with a friend recently, and he said that is arguably one of the toughest tests that one would really take. And if you
pilot aptitude test,
absolutely. And if you fail that once, the PBAT, I think they would call it, right?
Absolutely.
And he said you fail it once, you can actually never reapply. Then you can never be a flying airman. You'll just be someone who can pass be on the ground but not flying.
You're absolutely. You cannot be Douglas Bader after that. Yeah. So the basic thing is all your four, that is both the legs and two arms, they're all occupied in that in trying to keep the paper right in the center of the circle. Okay. So it'll keep moving and you'll keep moving your legs and hands and feet and everything so that paper remains in the center. And if your hand, eye, as well as leg coordination is fine, then only you can become a fighter pilot or a pilot. So I think that was our first step. I loved that test. For me, it was like playing video games. Video games weren't there that time, I'm talking of is 1975, 76. Correct. There were no video games. So it was like a video game to me and lovely.
Yeah. And that's a test that if you fail once, you can never become a pilot.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because your hand-eye combination as well as your feet coordination,
Right.
it has to be right the first time itself.
Agreed. Interesting. Now, growing up, of course, you would have heard of, the India-China conflict. You would have been really, really young at the time. And then, of course, the Indo-Pak War of 71. Did these also have a bearing on the path that you were to take?
Yeah, actually, you're right. Now that you have to think back, my dad went for he was emergency 62 commission. That time I was too young.
Right.
But 1965, I was 5 years old. So I saw him go. So we were excitedly waiting for him to come back and the goodies that he'll get. Because dads always look after you once they come back from a hard work.
So true.
Yeah. So then in 1971, when I was about 11 years old, that time I really remember we used to wait and watch on the television, black and white, but still try to see what is the situation in Bangladesh. I couldn't see my dad there, but I knew he's doing some part which is helping our country.
Of course. Yeah. And again, that is, one place where it was the Air Force and the Army that played a spectacular role.
He was from the air defense. I actually went to Chandigarh. And outside of Chandigarh, if you remember that time, there were 6 aircraft that had come and one of them was hit. And my dad's unit was that one. So I went, saw his bunkers, saw where he stayed, looked at the L-60 guns, if I remember right. They were the ones that they were using at that period of time. Wonderful.
So again, some degree of inspiration was coming from there.
Absolutely.
What do you think has changed? And again, we're going to talk about, people coming into the forces, again, in the 60s, 70s, 80s. My father went to the Lawrence School, Sanaa, as did I. And Sanaa was a school that sent, many people to the armed forces, both in terms of the Army and the Air Force, even the Navy. But
they always had a chip on the shoulder.
Is it?
Why was that?
Okay, I don't know. I guess we'll delve into that. Well, maybe. I think that was there to some extent. But what has changed and why have today youngsters stopped opting for the forces like they used to in the early days?
Actually, it's a beautiful question, No, most of us would say it is materialistic world. Most of us would say that the perspective today is to get rich quickly without putting the hard work.
Right.
Most of us would say that it is also the social media, the television, the films that you see and the way they show, very quickly you have become rich. You must have this kind of a lifestyle. You must have a Jaguar waiting on ground. Right. No, you can't get that from the armed forces. And again, the sensitivity towards not getting hurt is much higher. I remember the first time in school, I was told by one of the TV channels, don't cover this as an example, but I must cover with you because I've never covered it anywhere.
I love that.
I used to love English literature and I used to love poetry and I still love poetry. So at that period of time, I had an English teacher whom we used to call as Poems, Miss Poems.
Okay.
So because her pronunciation was like that. Right. And she used to always give me 5 marks. And I used to put my heart and soul in the assignments, try to analyze the poem and try to bring out those, key words and key lessons or whatever that came out, analysis that came out of the poem. Right. But I always got around 5 plus minus half mark. So one day I said, I must do something different. We had twins who used to top. They were in the same class. Okay. So I looked at one of the twins' copy and verbatim, chip diya. And then I put the copy to her for the assignment. Sure enough, I got 5. And when I looked at that, my friends, I don't want to take his name here now, but he's still a good friend of mine. Okay. And when I looked at his copy, he got 7.5 marks. Out of 10. Yeah. So I took both the copies. Now look at this. This is called courage, if you can look at it. Right. Otherwise, it's panga.
Of course.
And remember that time when nobody used to, do such things as to your teacher. So when I took those 2 copies and took it to her, and I said, what mistake I am making, please tell me that. Because I want to learn. She gave me a nice tight slap. So that's the first thing. That time, it was allowed. Nobody used to say anything. If I told my dad, he would have said, "Tune kaam hi kuch aisa kiya hoga." But that, I saw there was a behavioral change in her. Next time I gave the assignment, I was suddenly got a jump at 6.5. And then onwards, it motivated me. And I started doing well from my 9th class onwards.
Right. And I think based on the conversations that we've had even prior, you've been someone who's been willing to, of course, question authority, but we also go out there and fight above your weight. You were mentioning how you even had, and of course boxers would know what we're talking about. But the
Yeah.
fact is, there is someone who's bigger, stronger, a bully. But and you said at the time you were a relatively puny
Lean, but not
person,
mean.
right?
Yeah.
But you still went and you took this person on, and after that, even that person's attitude towards you changed drastically.
Absolutely. I think if you raise your voice to anything that is wrong that is taking place,
Right.
there is great respect both in the society as well as in the person against whom you are raising the voice. He becomes careful. This reminds me even afterwards when I was there in 2001 Parliament attack which took place.
Right.
I was given the opportunity to make the war plans. And before that, the commander-in-chief called me because I was making it for the entire command.
Wow.
And he said, "Why are you making the plans like this?" To explain to him, I took his glass of water, the glass which was there, which was filled with water, put it on the table at a particular point like this, which I did. And I said, "See the impact it is making. This is center of gravity. That is why I'm hitting the target here." He never questioned me after that.
Okay.
And after that, everybody used to ask me, "यार तूने commander in chief के कमरे में जाके कैसे glass को ऐसे करके बताया?" The point is that sometimes you have to say it a little more boldly to make your voice heard. It doesn't mean that you are disrespectful.
Correct.
What it means is that you want him to understand the logic of why you are doing a particular thing. And this has always come true. If you punch above your weight, assured you'll be knocked out. But next time that guy knows कि दो तो उसको भी पड़ी थी, and he'll be very careful to start anything with you.
Yeah. Love that. And you said we did have something in common that we both ended up winning best loser at some point in boxing as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Super. So let's go back then, to your time, early days in the Air Force. What was it like at that time? Where did you first join, and what were those first few years like?
Early time in the Air Force was like, I had got freedom from my home. 16 years of age, I left for National Defense Academy. I really wanted to get out. You know why? Because I didn't want to study anymore. बहुत पढ़ाई होगी, physics, chemistry, maths, accountancy, biology, ये सब कुछ ले रखा था मैंने. We had 11th board that time, not 12th wasn't there.
Right.
So when I went there, I thought, अब से तो पढ़ाई होनी नहीं है. And you know what is my degrees today? PhD, triple masters, and multiple certifications in Six Sigma, risk management, ISO 9001, humanitarian laws, everything you can think about under the sun. I've never stopped studying. So, but at the same time, I felt freedom when I left because I wanted to do things on my own. I wanted to explore the world. And what best way than the armed forces, which taught you discipline, which taught me how to walk, fly, and which taught me to take chances, and which taught me the right thing to follow the path of righteousness, And I used to love it. And in fact, as you love it, so responsibilities come to you. At a very young age, they made me an adjutant also. At a very young age, I went to Top Gun school as an instructor. Most of the guys used to come for flying combat missions and learning combat were the guys who were senior to me.
Yep.
In fact, some of them even later on became the chiefs of air staff and other appointments. And what was the pleasure I used to get? I still remember a combat mission that we were doing practice on a trainer aircraft where both of us were there. Suddenly at this attitude of a MiG-23, he told me, "You got her, I don't know what to do." So now the speed is bleeding off to zero, and these aircraft are not very easy to control because they have those swept back wings. And it could stall anytime, means go out of control anytime. But look at the confidence which even seniors had on me to give me these responsibilities. And I really enjoyed them. Really loved it.
Love that.
They molded my character,
Of course. And what were the aircrafts that you were flying in the early days?
The aircraft that I started flying initially transonic was Hunter, just for a short period of time, a few, let's say about 40, 50 hours. And then I went on to the MiG-21s. And I'm telling you, a lovely aircraft. People call it a flying coffin. It is called as a flying coffin by those who could not master it, or by those who do not understand the mechanics of how fighter flying or fighter jockeys work. It was an aircraft that was difficult because it had delta platform. It was an aircraft that was unforgiving. But when you took it to its limits, it always supported you. It always brought me home. It was very sturdy aircraft, very reliable. I have thousands of hours on that in all versions of MiG-21. Not a single accident or incident.
Oh, thank God for that.
Yeah, thank God for that.
Right,
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. No, lovely. And post the MiG-21s, were you flying something else also post that as well?
Yeah. When I was flying the MiG-21s, my first squadron was 4 Squadron Uriels, which is older the Uriel, harder the horn. So at that's the motto of that squadron. So at that time, I had a MiG-23 BN, which was a ground attack aircraft, come and land in our base. And that aircraft had a tail difference of only 6 inches from ground. And I said, I'm flying an air defense aircraft. Ye to kabhi fly nahi karna. And I was very thrilled. Sure enough, God said you don't want to fly, right? Because you think you're going to touch your tail. It's difficult to fly. It's a swing wing. The aircraft, you could swing your wings forward, middle for attack, and behind to run away.
Mirage would be similar as well, would it?
Mirage is a delta platform. Whereas this means you could actually swing your wings. You brought it right up to straight like this 16 degrees position when you came for landing because you required lower speeds. At 45 degrees, you could do combat. You could fight with other aircraft or strike on ground. And at 72 degrees, it's like that birds, who have very swift back wings and who go high speed. It becomes high speed and you can run away in case you have to run away from a particular place. So it was a beautiful aircraft. But I said, isko fly nahi karna. It looks to touching the ground. And a lot of people have touched their tails. And again, God said, you must go. You must build this ability to tackle difficult things. And the Air Force sent me there. I had thousands of hours on that aircraft also. And I loved flying that. Yeah.
And of course, many would have heard the story of you, winning the Vayu Sena medal. And that happened when you were commanding a base. And there was a pilot whose MiG-21, I think, overshot. And the rest of the squadron was probably parked over there as well. And there was a fire that broke out and a collision. Do you want to talk our viewers and listeners through that as well?
Let me tell you one thing first. If you were there in my position, you would have done the same thing and you would have got the gallantry medal, like the Air Force were very kind enough to give it to me. So I was senior flight safety and inspection officer there. And I was about to take over the MiG-27 squadron, which is the only Paramveer Chakra squadron, where Nirmaljeet Singh Sekhon got Paramveer Chakra on a NAT aircraft because the squadron in 1971 was on NATs. Then when I was commanding it in 1999, it was a MiG-27 squadron. So just before command, they had positioned me as a senior flight safety officer in that base, which is Kalaikunda. Now, you know where is Kalaikunda? It is Kharagpur ke paas. And that place is so remote and filled with Naxalites. But nobody said anything to us. They had no business with the Air Force. We had no business with them. But at the same time, some of my most pleasant memories are with that base. So there was a day, around 11, 12 in the morning between this time. There's an aircraft which was coming for landing. So when it was, it had not selected flaps. The flaps for those who are uninitiated is camber surface towards, if you fly next time in a transport aircraft, in a Boeing, look on the wings and sit close to that. You will see just before landing, something like this comes and increases the camber. So it reduces speed, increases the lift. And if you don't lower that, then the aircraft can stall, which means it can go out of control. So on that aircraft that day, the flaps were not lowered. So when the speed came to stalling speed, which wouldn't have come had the flaps been down, the aircraft stalled, did this, then scraping the runway, the pilot died immediately on contact with ground at 300 plus kilometers per hour. And then it went, and there were 10 aircraft parked like this, 10 aircraft here, and here's the air traffic control tower. In between, there were 2 aircraft. It went and hit those 2 aircraft. And all 3 burst into flames. And the fire was going as much as 30, 40 meters high. And the small parts of the aircraft were going around like bullets all over. It's those small pieces, shrapnels, which keep going around. Yeah, at that time, I rushed to that place. Now, there were about 300-400 people who had gathered because of the accident. But the fire was so intense that all of them were hesitating. And there were 3 sides, we were fire tenders. It's not that things weren't there. Everything reached there promptly.
Right.
But the decision was who will jump into the fire to take the hose close to the aircraft so that you can spray it with foam and form a human chain so that you can rescue. But once somebody told me there's a guy stuck inside, then I don't know what happened. Like I told you, you were there in my place, you would have done the same. So I jumped into the fire. My feet got a little bit burnt and shoes got charred because of the hot lava type of fuel that was coming out. The aircraft could have exploded at any moment at this time. And that's the time when moment I jumped into the fire, I found the fire tenders also coming in like this from all three sides. They got the hose and we were able to put out the fire in a few minutes after that. By then we had picked up one guy who had been charred. You know, first thing that burns off in a fire like this is the clothes. Right. And that guy was now without clothes with half charred body and nobody was picking it up. And something basic respect to human body, you know. So when I started putting my hands down to lift it up, then everybody else started doing. And that's the day I realized, you know, it's not that people are scared. वो डर के आगे जीत वाली बात है ना. It is not that people are scared. They just want somebody to initiate the process. Correct. And moment you initiate the process, the real heroes then come out. And all of them became the heroes.
Wow. Yeah, commendable, you know, in terms of how you went ahead and you did what you did.
Instinctive, sir.
Yeah.
You would have done the same. Anybody would have done the same if he was holding that authority.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Wow.
And, you know, because of that, one great thing has happened. My pension is tax-free, which is 20% of my pension. That's phenomenal amount. Let me assure you this.
And that happens because you win the Vayu Sena medal?
Gallantry. This was Vayu Sena medal gallantry. So if you win a gallantry medal,
the pension is tax-free.
Then pension is tax-free.
Right. Fantastic.
And I'm very thankful to Air Force.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Right. Interesting. Now, let's talk about, you know, some of the other...
You know, it's the fourth largest Air Force in the world. But in my mind, it is the most professional and best Air Force and loving leaders inside it who groom you, you know, at every stage.
Right. So when you're talking about the first four, I guess USA is 1, Russia is 2, China is 3, India is 4.
India is 4.
Right. And we at the moment technically are supposed to have 42 squadrons, though I think we're somewhere between 29 and 30. I think that's the
29
number that
squadrons, yeah.
But who decided that 42 is the magic number in case, you know, there is to be a fight on two fronts? We should have 42 squadrons.
They carried out this study, I forget whether it was in 1960s or 70s. Sometimes this study was carried out. Right. And it was identified that 42 squadrons at that period of time would be considered to be appropriate in case a two-front threat came up. Right. Today, in fact, I was reading in the newspapers yesterday or day before, the government is now, you know, munching on whether we should have a 50 squadron policy because of the two front becoming that much more potent today. And especially when China has close to 270 J-20 fifth generation aircraft lined up, especially at Ladakh and opposite Ladakh and other areas of Tibetan Autonomous Region. I think the government is thinking on the right lines. I'm sure they will be thinking about it.
Agreed. What's your opinion of the J-20 since you mentioned it? What's your opinion of the J-20 as a fighter aircraft compared to, you know, some of the conventional big boys, the F-35s, the Sukhois, the Rafales? How do you rate the
J-20? Sura so pehchaniye jo lade deen ke het, purja kat mare, kabo na chhado khet. Koi bhi jahaz le aao. Hindustani pilot ko bithao uske andar. And you will see magic happen. And that I'm convinced. Okay, that's apart. Because we shot down 13 Pakistani aircraft in Op Sindoor. Nobody knows. I mean, our chief mentioned it, but nobody talks about it. But at the same time, J-20, when it initially came in, it wasn't such a good stealthy aircraft and we could pick it up on our radars. Right. And even today, I'm convinced that the S-400 radar can pick up a J-20 at 96 kilometers distance. Right. So it's not that stealthy means that you are invisible. Stealthy means that you have radar absorbent material paint on your aircraft that, you know, diffuses the waves that come in from the radar, with the result you get picked up only at closer distances. So it is a huge, big aircraft. Right. It gets picked up at closer distances, but it is not invisible. That is one. But at the same time, it is fifth generation. So which means that when we have only 4.5 generations, We do need a fifth generation, and that is the reason why we are going in for AMCA, which is Advanced Medium Combat Aircraft. And probably by the time it flies first time in about 2028 to 2030, first prototype is likely to fly. In fact, all three will fly hopefully by 2030. Right. And then production may start at 2035. If they don't, I'm going to have a serious talk with the chair. Now, if they start by 2035, and by then, they would have already progressed from fifth to sixth generation. And I think our government's policy is also looking at that. Right. We start building up a fifth generation. We start incorporating sixth generation technologies so that when 2035 comes and we start producing these aircraft for the Indian Air Force, at that period of time, it's actually closer to sixth generation than fifth generation. The problem in our case is not that Indians are not brainy. I mean, we are the brains all over the world. And you look at the MNCs and you look at the CEOs, I don't want to give you example, especially you, who's so learned from yourself. But at the same time, when we look at our country, there's only one thing, that by the time they develop a particular technology, the world has moved ahead. Great. So now, but I like the government's policy this time, that unless there is an ecosystem, entire industrial ecosystem that is built up, there is no way that you can reach sixth generation. So whilst we give 83 LCA's order, whilst we give additional 97 Mark 1A order, and they too haven't yet been delivered, even one of them, and the fifth engine has just come in. And primarily it is because of the delays that we are there for the engine that is going to come from G404 engine from the US. And a lot of times I believe, it's in my mind always, जब भी यूएस का नाम आता ना तो कहीं ना कहीं कुछ सस्पिशन हो जाता है, वो कॉन्स्पिरेसी थ्योरी with the Americans, that sometimes I feel they deliberately delay also so that our equipment does not remain that contemporary as the American equipment is. Now, coming back to your question of F-35 and J-20, the F-35, nobody today in the world, it's the best stealth aircraft. Means it has a RCS, radar cross-section of 0.0015 to 0.005 in different aspects. Nose always has the least, and when you're looking at on the sides, there's the maximum because the reflectivity area is maximum. Sure. Now, F-35, nobody can beat in stealth characteristics. Correct. Okay, second part is, nobody can beat today network centricity. Network centricity means that all the sensors that are in the air, different radars, your own enemies, on ground, your own enemies, the different target systems, the entire picture is picked up and put comprehensively into one composite picture, identifying which is your friend and foe, identifying the vector that can destroy that target first. So network centricity, again, nobody can beat it. F-35. But it has got a single engine. And I don't like single engine aircraft because if you remember, not that I don't like LC, I'm very proud of our own aircraft and I feel that at least we have moved forward. We're one of the world's best handling aircraft, agile aircraft today we are flying in our country. Okay. In fact, my 18 squadron is a LCA squadron now. I went there recently about two and a half weeks back. Right. I sat in the cockpit, but they didn't let me fly it. Despite my repeated requests, they said, no, sir, now you are a veteran. Yeah. You cannot be put even in a trainer. But at the same time, it has got really good avionics, digital fly-by-wire, quadruplex, 4-channel fly-by-wire system. The bells and whistles are all there. Everything. Yeah. So F-35, but it is also single engine, Right. Single engine means if something goes wrong with your aircraft, such a costly, remember March 2024, we lost an LCA because of G404 engine failure. Right. So what happened because of that? We lost a multi-million-dollar aircraft because we had only single engine. So in my mind, it is very clear that India should now be looking at mostly the twin engine. And also with the urbanization taking place with so many birds all around you, we don't want to have an aircraft where these bird hit can cause an aircraft loss of hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, second part is the F-35 is very costly. it costs you $82 to $110 million, depending on what all goodies that you are attaching along with it, what all type of weapon systems, long range, short range weapon systems, air to ground, air to air. So when you add on all this, then the price may jump from $82 to $110 million per piece.
Right.
And now, when we are looking at that price, and you know what is the operational maintainability and of that cost of that aircraft? It is $35,000 a flight hour. And when you reduce it also, you make it very optimum. It is just $25,000. It is $25,000 an hour. A Su-57 is much cheaper. A Su-30 MKI much cheaper. LCA much cheaper.
And cheaper by how much percentage you would say?
I would say cheaper by at least 50%.
Wow.
If we are looking at what the F-35 requires. But the worst thing about F-35 is, its operational reliability.
Yeah.
Are you aware that just between 50 to 55% is the availability of this aircraft? The number of crashes, 4 or 5 have taken place in the last 5 years. I won't trust that aircraft. Okay. And remember that aircraft that came on an exercise with us?
It was grounded here. It didn't move only for
a few months. It couldn't hack the weather pattern of our country. So, or maybe it couldn't hack the radars that we have in the Indian Air Force. So it decided to park itself here.
Down south, Kerala was it? I think.
Absolutely. In south somewhere. It was.
That was quite a joke, right? Like it was almost a sales pitch from their side. And this was the demo gone wrong.
Demo gone wrong. So,
right. Yeah, agree on that front as well. And so just for our viewers and listeners, when you say 5th gen versus let's say a 4.5, what are the key differences between a 5th gen and a 4.5?
Absolutely. And a 6th gen.
And a 6th gen.
Yeah. Because 6th gen is already flying. A prototype's already flying in China. We have 2 of them from different companies, Shangyang Corporation and Chengdu Aerospace Corporation. So these are the 2 companies flying 2 different 6th generation aircraft. Prototypes yet, not operational. Okay, so 4.5 generation is low observability, like Rafale. Okay. It has about 0.1 square meter as its radar cross-section. Okay. Whereas when we look at, Sukhoi 30, it is anywhere from 5 to 7 square meters. Right. And when we look at a MiG-21, it used to be 3 square meters. Mm-hmm. So when we look at LCA also, it is about 0.1 to 0.5 square meters. So it is a relatively small aircraft, so it's not easily picked up by the radar and less reflectivity is there. Sure. So any aircraft whose observability is low and gets picked up at lesser distance, but it is not a stealth aircraft, is called 4.5 generation. It has advanced avionics. It has an active electronically scanned array radar, which means that there is no rotating antenna, but it is the beam which is scanned by different transmit and receive modules that are there, multiple of them in the aircraft itself. And they give you much more accurate picture in terms of accuracy as well as in extended range. So that's a 4.5. Now we come to 5th generation. 5th generation onwards, it is stealthy. Stealthy means that, let's say, if a 4.5 generation aircraft got picked up at 120, 150 kilometers, this will get picked up between 95 to 100 kilometers. And again, we have a better engine which diffuses the reflectivity of both RCS, that is radar cross-section, as well as heat signature. Heat is how hot the surface is oblique the heat that comes out from your engines. So if you can diffuse that heat signature, so these are the ones that are diffused, and also they are the ones, if you see, even when they don't engage the afterburner. Afterburner means that fuel you throw on the exhaust and there is a huge flame and gives you sudden acceleration and jerk. So even without an afterburner, they can go and remain supersonic. And supersonic means more than 1 speed of sound, or Mach 1, which is 1225 kilometers an hour on ground level. So these kind of additional things, and they are also network centricity and 5th generation generally. Right now, currently, I'm not sure J20 can do this, but most 5th generation, like even a Su-57 or a F-35, they do MUMT, manned, unmanned teaming operations, which means they have drones all along it. And now they may be looking at and coordinating and controlling these drones and identifying the target systems which drone may take on or which fighter may take on. But at the same time, they are flying a composite mission between a drone as well as a fighter
Wow.
aircraft.
So almost like a hybrid approach there now.
Exactly. So now there is something called sixth generation.
Yeah.
Now, if you see sixth generation, we are looking at much faster speeds. They are looking at Mach 2.5,
Right.
2.5 times the speed of sound.
Yeah.
They're looking at air-to-air ranges of about 400, 500, even 1,000 kilometers. Currently, the Chinese are testing an air-to-air beyond visual range missile of a range of 1,000 kilometers.
Fantastic.
The change in warfare is, if you can be outside the air defense limit where they can shoot you down and now fire your air-to-ground weapon,
Right.
then you are safe and the enemy is finished, like we did in Op Sindoor.
Correct.
We started firing Brahmas and scalp from such ranges, they couldn't touch us. And also S-400 didn't allow any of their aircraft to get upon. We created a world record,
Right.
314 kilometers. We shot down on high-value target.
Yeah.
So this is the warfare going to be, which means extended range, and these ranges will continue to get extended, and that is sixth generation. Then sixth generation is also your network centricity is much, much more, stealthiness is much, much more, and at the same time, this speed is much higher. They even have 3 engines. One of the sixth generation aircraft of China has 3 engines. A lot of people ask me this question, now that drones are there and you have a $3,000 drone hit at a Tu-95 or a Tu-22 strategic bomber costing $100 to $125 million,
Correct.
why do you need a fighter aircraft?
Agreed.
Okay. Why do you think the Chinese are making the sixth generation? They already have 270 and they want to make fifth generation, about 1,000 aircraft or so they want to manufacture of fifth generation by the time 2035 comes. Why do you think the Americans have started with their X-47 now going into what they call F-47?
Right.
Because Trump wants it to be called as
After him, the 47th president of America.
47th president of America.
Yeah.
Why is the world going back to sixth generation and that to fighter aircraft when we are talking of unmanned systems? Primarily because in a contested airspace, it is the fighter aircraft that has more survivability than the drone. You know how many drones the Ukrainians are losing? 10,000 drones a month. You know how many drones they are producing? 4.5 million drones a year. They are producing a million more drones than the Russians are producing, yet they are losing the war.
Yeah.
So if drones were the panacea and if drones could win wars for you,
Right.
drones can create a strategic effect. They
Right.
can be the strategic disruptors.
The optics of it can perhaps be...
Optics is very good. You see a refinery blowing up, you see oil fire catching fire, gas pipeline blown up, or you see an airfield attack or a strategic bomber with the first person view drone coming and hitting that bomber. It all looks very nice.
Yeah.
Has it reduced truly the capability of Russia?
No.
And today it is moving fast forward in the Donbass area, that is both Luhansk and Donetsk. So I personally feel for the next 40 years, the manned aircraft will continue to remain relevant. However, there is a slow transition from manned to unmanned.
Right.
Now there is coming up manned, unmanned teaming, and then will come up unmanned totally. And that probably may take 35 to 40 years from today.
Yeah. I mean, of course, I think first place we're seeing this is, of course, in cars now. And you're already seeing cars in the US are now being driven by...
Automatic,
right?
yeah.
And of course, I'm sure, I think 35 years is probably, quite accurate.
Yeah.
And when you mentioned about drones and the ineffectiveness of drones, so even during Operation Sindoor, I mean, so many drones came in from the other side. But I think the DRDO and all the equipments that we had in terms of jammers and everything else, they did brilliant in terms of, countering all of those, bringing them down, or at least confusing them to, go off target, etc. What was happening on that side as far as our equipment? And right now we talk about the drones, we talk about the S-400 data. But if we talk about, some of the DRDO, electronic jamming systems and other stuff that kind of, took these drones down, what was really happening on that side?
देव सिवा पर मोहे है शुभ कर्मंते कभो न डरो और सो जब चाहे लरो निश्चय कर अपनी जीत करो and that is exactly what happened. They sent their drones in 400 to 600 in number in just 2 days and continuous day and night and including their Fatah 2 missile and you had Abdali coming up and remember that Fatah 2 getting shot down near Sirsa, it was supposed to go to Delhi. We were able to intercept it. So in all this, we had a very nice integrated air defense system, which we'll talk later, like you rightly said.
Sure.
But we also had our electronic warfare systems. Indian Army had their Dhar Shakti and Samyukta.
Right.
These are the two electronic warfare systems. We did total area coverage. They had the ability both from electronic surveillance, which means to able to identify the various electronic emissions and radar emissions that are taking place from across the border on ground as well as in air. And they also had the ability to jam them, whether soft kill, but no hard kill, because they are not hard kill weapons. Hard kill weapons were different, which we will talk in integrated air defense. But they could also do the jamming effect. Now, they proved to be very effective. And especially, when we talk of drones, there are two jammings that could take place. One is the radio frequency link between the ground controlled operator who's now controlling this drone, if it is not in autonomous mode, but the drone has this standby ability, redundancy of going in autonomous mode also. And the second is to jam the GPS. You remember the GPS spoofing that took place in Delhi, and such a havoc it created. Chaos at the airport. So these are the two areas where the jamming can take place. And in this way, you could mislead the drone and it would become ineffective. And that's what it led astray. A lot of drones like this also, besides the number of drones that we actually shot down.
And the S-400, of course, it really proved its mettle. And like you said, 314 kilometer
high value target.
I mean, that's just insane. And the S-400s are obviously controlled by the Indian Air Force as well, because sometimes people say ye to army ne kiya hoga, but it's actually the Air Force that controls the S-400.
I must clear one thing here, because of blue blood ki baat hai, I must clear that Indian Air Force has the sole responsibility of air defense of the entire country.
Good to know.
And it is because of this reason that all the Akash Tirs of the army is done exceptionally well. They've got this system, Akash Tir, which has artificial intelligence incorporated in it. And remember, we were talking of network centricity. And in this system, it takes up the picture of all the different radars on ground that is coming up, integrates it and puts as a one composite picture and tells you which is the weapon system, which is the closest, which can take on this, and which is also cost effective, because you can feed these parameters already before into the Akash Tir itself. Now, most of these, I think about 100, 120 were already integrated with the Integrated Air Command and Control System of the Air Force, which is a similar thing, but at a much larger scale. Because we are even taking inputs that are coming from the space, from the air, from the ground. All those inputs are getting merged in one Integrated Air Command. And that's an indigenous system. Both are indigenous. Akash Tir is also indigenous. That is also, it's the indigenous system that actually did exceptionally well in this war. So this two gets combined. And now there is certain amount of autonomous leeway which is given to the local air defense systems with the army as and when those targets come within their range. So this integration, though done by the Air Force and Army both together, but at the same time responsibility of the Air Force and allowing a degree of autonomous freedom, at the same time overall air defense, it keeps with its hand. That's why S-400 can start taking off from 400 kilometers, 250, 120, and then can come down to 40 to 70 kilometers till last. And then you're handing over to medium range SAMs from 70 kilometers, whether it is Barak 8 or whether it is Akash extended range, and also the Israeli other systems, medium range SAM. And then you come down to close-in weapon systems, which could even include your L-70 upgraded guns, which could include your counter unmanned aerial system, weapon systems, which are the ones that our own indigenous development has taken place. And now the DRDO is coming up with IDDIC, which detects drones and intercepts them. This integrated drone detection and interception system is already working, already there in the army, and it is also got a range of 1 to 2. It picks up the targets at 3 to 5 kilometers and hits them both with the soft kill, that is jamming them, and hard kill. Hard kill means physical laser beam is fired at them, and that shoots down the drone or makes it get disintegrated.
Correct.
So when we are looking at this, it had a range of only 1 to 2 kilometers.
Sure.
Now we are coming out with 30 kilowatt system. And that 30 kilowatt system gives a range of 3.5 to 5 kilometers, a detection range of 6 kilometers. India is also developing 80 to 100 kilowatt systems.
Fantastic.
And today the world's best systems are between 8 to 10. The iron beam that we are talking of has a range of only 10 kilometers. India is very close to that. And in future, we are going to have systems which beat the world's best air defense systems.
Fantastic. And when did this change? Because, India was always, again, growing up, was so reliant on, foreign inputs and, like foreign technology.
Khareed lo.
Right. And there used to be, and because we keep hearing about, how much has gone in terms, kickbacks and whatnot. Where did this all start changing, and how have we been able to do it so quickly? Because normally you find it rare to, move at this pace and the speed at which we're currently now moving.
What happens in when we do indigenous development, because there is no industrial ecosystem as we were talking of earlier.
Right.
By the time we develop a technology, it is already got delayed and you're already getting outdated.
Yeah.
But this government, the current government, took a conscious decision. They said, so what? Even if we are half a generation behind. But unless we create this ecosystem, industrial ecosystem, which is both private and public, as well as DRDO research agencies, as well as universities, unless you have this ecosystem here, you will not be able to get the top of the line systems. Right now, Israel may have 10 kilometer counter US system. But the current government's thinking is that if you can reach 5 kilometers today, in a few years, you'll reach 10 kilometers. And then we are at par and we are going to move ahead very rapidly, because it is the Indian brains that work everywhere in the world. And I'm sure they would love to come back to this country and contribute to us.
No, I love that. And I agree. The idea is to just get started, because we're like, kaise karenge, kab karenge, nahi ho
Somebody
payega.
has to take that call.
And they actually
And the current government has taken that call. Ki, theek hai, we'll build the ecosystem.
Super.
When we are in this half to one generation behind, the only thing I feel is that for even the current gaps, technological gaps, we could import some in co-development, so that transfer of technology takes place and we don't have to reinvent the wheels. So this one solution may be there, which I think the government is also considering, because now we've got Safran engine being co-developed in India with TOT. And my recommendation was the same for Su-57. If we take it, then we get 5th generation technology off the shelf. TOT, co-development, and 50% of the infrastructure still exists in our country.
And are these countries willing to transfer some of that technology to us as well and work on a
Nobody.
collaborative platform?
In fact, when we looked at Mirage 2000, they didn't want to give us the source code also. And we couldn't put indigenous weapon systems on that, because India has really done well in the weapon systems. Whether you look at Brahmas, integrated guided missiles, or development program IGMDP, or that is Agni, Prithvi, and others, or whether you look at even, Rudram, air-to-air missiles, we are actually doing very well. We are doing very well even in radars. We're slightly behind, but I'm sure we are going to pick up very fast on that also. We are already coming up with Viru Paksha, which has 2,400 transmit receive modules. And which is the world's best radar, has got 2,320 transmit receive modules. We are very close to it. Within 2 years, that should be coming online. And I personally feel that we should be getting Viru Paksha onto the later models of the Mark 1A rather than wait for Mark 2 or any other. So we are going to do well. I'm confident.
So, and earlier just touched upon on the stealth topic, for example, and like I said, we have a great instance that happened very recently where the Iranian nuclear capabilities were knocked out by the American B-2 bombers.
Natanz, Fardo, and Isfahan. 11,500 kilometers. They did a lot of air-to-air refueling. They came, B-2s, and they came and bombed these 3 nuclear sites and went back. And they did not expect it, because they were expecting they'll be basing them.
Garcia, right?
Absolutely. Diego Garcia, which is about 4,000 kilometers from Iran.
All the way from the US?
All the way from Whiteman Air Force Base. Absolutely. And that is why, one more reason why the fighters are going to remain relevant for a considerable period of time. Because if you plan, what is the cost of Global Hawk or Sentinel? One wild guess.
I don't know, like $550 million.
That is a bit too much, but at least you try. 140 is the basic. $140 million is the basic version.
Right.
And your F-35 costs you cheaper than that.
Yeah.
I'm talking about drone, Global Hawk. And then the Block 40 model costs you anywhere from $240 to $300 million. You are very close to it, actually, when you said it. Probably by the time it becomes operationalized, it will be costing about $400 to $500 million. Right. So if you are going to have drones that are going to do this mission in such a cost, then why not get a fighter aircraft, which is stealth, which has air-to-air refueling done and does the cost at a much lower cost, and you can reuse it. And this can also be reused. But problem with these drones is that their radar cross-section is very high because they are huge. They can get picked up. So you'll have to make them stealthy, which means they'll become even costlier than even a fighter aircraft.
Right. And any of the Asian powers, I mean, of course, China and India, are they pursuing a stealth bomber program? And when do you think they'll actually get there?
China is pursuing it. And China is going to be very close to getting it on board maybe in the next, I would put it at 4 to 5 years. It should be, you will be seeing one of those. They are already testing it as far as I know, but they could be operationalizing. You may see it in Ladakh, flying over Ladakh, any of these. But there is, I personally, my own opinion is that, that fear of bombers coming to Calcutta or Delhi, which was there in 1962, which prevented them from using the Air Force. And had we used the Air Force, we wouldn't have lost that war. That is the only war where Air Force was not used, and that's the only war that we lost. So my opinion is that if you have a B-2 bomber, any bomber, stealth bomber, they get picked up at certain ranges. It's not that they are invisible, suddenly like that James Bond movie where the car becomes invisible. It's reflecting everywhere. I don't remember which one.
Yeah. I remember the one you were speaking about.
Yeah. It doesn't happen like that. So they will be picked up. That is one. And how much does a B-2 bomber cost? $1 billion. Right. Around that cost. Yeah. So my case rests.
For sure. Interesting when you mentioned, the Indo-China conflict, and we did not use our Air Force. What was the logic behind not using the Air Force? Because we figured that they're going to come back with airplanes. But China's time, I mean, they must have been fairly weak even as an Air Force at the time.
They were very weak. In fact, they didn't have those type of aircraft which could operate from the high altitude airfields and carry that kind of payload or weightage of bombs that could be dropped over India, except one of their old bomber aircraft. Now, what Nehru at that time and what his advisors, they tried to put in his mind were the World War II images of the bombers coming and dropping bombs over cities and thousands dying in a few attacks like that. Right. So, and destruction, complete destruction. That was the idea that was fed into his mind. So he was very worried. Second thing was fed was that it was believed that in mountains, and that time there was no precision bombs. Right. So they said if they're going to attack targets in mountains, it's very difficult to pick up. We didn't have precision weapons. Except for the Mirage 2000 sortie over Tiger Hill. Right. Rest of every place we had dropped it either GPS aided or we had directly looked at the target and gone and hit it. So somewhere down the line, I personally feel the thing about bomber threat was overplayed. Right. And when I had actually war-gamed it, I found there were only 1 or 2 airfields from which those bombers could have taken off with the range and payload that they had. And we could have easily knocked off because we were operating from planes. We could carry that payload. Right. We could go through the hills, mask our route. They wouldn't have picked up. There were hardly any radars at that time in Tibetan Autonomous Region. We can go, we could have gone and their aircraft would have been lined up on the runway like the 1967 Arab-Israeli war.
Right. Sitting ducks lined up to be knocked out.
Absolutely.
And you think that would have changed the entire course of the war?
Exactly. And secondly, lines of communication. They are very tenuous in mountains. And the army that operates, and especially the one that is attacking, requires a large amount of ammunition and logistic support. Right. And it is moving ahead. you have to just hit not even the road or the bridge. Even if you hit the hill, there'll be so much of fall of rocks and other debris that it is going to cause you a complete road blockage. And then when they get concentrated in that area, if 2 areas you can bomb, you could easily knock them off. So, I mean, it would have been really very interesting for the Indian Air Force to take on a large columns of Chinese which were moving at that time. And we did a little bit work, but not offensive, but we were mostly in reconnaissance as well as in support. We carried tanks to Ladakh, and that's the only place where they could not win because our tanks were there.
Yeah. And of course, right now you just mentioned, Kargil and using the Mirages. So that was the first instance where we actually used laser-guided bombs.
That's the first time we fired in anger. A laser-guided bomb. The modification, my friend was flying it, Wing Commander Raghunath Nambiar.
Okay.
He flew that mission over Tiger Hill. And what the army said after that it was cakewalk for us after that. Before that, they had lost a lot of men. Okay. But it was not a cakewalk for them. They were being nice to us. Army is always nice to us. So they were being nice to us when they said it was a cakewalk because of this mission. And he retired as an air marshal. In fact, I got a message today only from him. He said, I'm remembering my LCA days where I flew as an escort in Mirage 2000 to the first LCA sortie which was flown in 2001. He had sent this message to me, a long message today, and see how you're talking about it. And he did that attack, and he also got some awards for that.
I'm sure.
But yes, that was the first time we fired in anger. And then we again, a lot of times we don't report what happens.
Agreed.
Like, for example, Sagang Division. I'm not sure we did it. Those drones or the missiles that went and hit the Ulfa the commanders.
Right.
Maybe we didn't do it. Right. Maybe they were like Munir says, Allah ki din, miracle ho gaya. Correct. So maybe it is a miracle. But a lot of times there are missions that are not acknowledged for keeping the international sensitivities in mind. Right. In July, August 2002, if I remember right, it was 29 July and 2nd August, Mirages did 2 missions, one over Lunda Post and one over, and this is the time just after the Parliament attack had taken place.
Okay.
Lunda Post, and second was over Kale area. These Mirage 2000s with 1,000-pounder precision weapons went and bombed the hell out of those bunkers, Pakistani bunkers. So in one, I believe, the close to 38 people or 28 soldiers died, if I can remember rightly, Pakistani soldiers. Right. And in another, they could not estimate, but there were 4 bunkers that were neutralized completely. So there must be lots of damage on the Pakistani side.
I'm sure. And at Kargil, you also had a couple of other instances that you were speaking about where you actually lost people who were, close to you as well. And there were a couple of incidents that you said you'd like to share as well.
Yeah, there is one incident of Ajay Ahuja, a close friend of mine. We had breakfast together, family together. And that was just a few weeks or a month or two before the Kargil operations took place. Right. And a very great guy, always kept smiling, and laughing, and good josh in him. So he was flying the MiG-21, and ahead of him was Nachiketa, who was flying a MiG-27. Right. Now, at high altitudes, the engine performance lags. And if you open throttle quickly, or if there is some weather phenomenon that has taken place, sure, the engine was giving problem to that pilot, Nachiketa, and he ejected. But after ejection, he landed up in crossing the LOC. We were not crossing the LOC. Let's say if this is the hill, and remember, hill is like this. Correct. So if you're attacking the hill and trying to go out, but if you eject here, the aircraft keeps going ahead. Correct. And he landed up beyond LOC. Right. In trying to look for him and maintain, he continued to fly on top, trying to spot him so that our guys could go and pick him up, or he could be assisted to come back over. Right. At this time, there was a Stinger missile which was fired from ground. And his aircraft got hit. He had to eject. He also landed up in beyond the LOC. And then those guys, they caught hold of him. Apparently, He had a broken ankle when we got his body back, or a foot. But at the same time, there were 2 bullets on his head. So apparently they had, and we did put this complaint to Pakistan High Commission that they have broken the Geneva Convention. There is
Because
a rule.
A man in uniform cannot be
shot
cannot
like
be
this.
Right, of course.
And once you have captured him, you cannot shoot him. You can shoot him in combat. And the rule 1295 is very clear. You have to give humane, you cannot torture him physically or mentally. You have to give him all the facilities till he is there with you. And when the war stops, then you're supposed to hand him over back.
Right. Yeah, that's very tragic.
Yeah.
And of course, we did have another airman, which was Abhinandan, who was actually brought back in, I think, 60 hours or less, when he actually, did come down in Pakistan as well.
Our government is pretty good that way. They threaten them. Chhad deo, nahi te chhaddange nahi. And they did this. Where is the choice with Pakistan? And Imran Khan had to come out in the parliament and say, we are releasing him. And there was a threat from us, telling them very clearly that we are going to respond very severely if the pilot is not released. And there is a feeling today, that the government does take the hard decisions.
India se पंगा आप नहीं ले सकते.
India se पंगा आप नहीं ले सकते.
Correct.
Absolutely.
So true. And I think it was the 27th of Feb is when he was shot down, and 1st of March he was back,
Absolutely.
which was beyond anyone's expectations, right?
Beyond my expectations also, because apparently he was tortured, and apparently there were a lot of things done to him, but he came back. And he flew after 6 months. He flew fighters. Fantastic. That's a great thing. Yeah.
Is he still active in the services?
Yes. He's still in the flying business, aviation business. He's still progressing. But of course, the Air Force doesn't want to highlight too much of people, because when you start talking too much, then the Pakistanis get needled.
Right.
And there is no point needling them on an issue which we don't require to needle. We'll needle them. We'll needle them on many other issues, in other ways. पानी नहीं देंगे उनको, और अगर कल कुछ करेंगे तो Op Sindoor continues.
You're right. Even in terms of in Operation Sindoor, I think the entire top brass of the, especially the Air Force, very circumspect in terms of what they were really speaking about, what they were really, the commentary that was really going out, even at the press conferences. I think some of the questions that were asked at the press conferences were terrible. When he gave an opportunity, as the air chief to say, okay, ask me anything. And they would keep, kitne gire. He's like, why are we after this, kitne gire wala, question that's really there. And I think you mentioned this in one of your other podcasts where they were decoys, they were, other things that went down. So you can't say that it's actually one of our, big aircrafts that really
went down. Where is the
down.
proof? You show me one debris. They showed one debris. And what was that debris?
It was like a toy, right?
Absolutely. They were drop tanks of Mirage aircraft. Drop tanks, and they were saying this is an aircraft. Arey Baba, don't fool anybody. You look at what Tom Cooper said. He said India had won the air battle very clearly. You look at the other Western American specialist. What was his name? Daniel or something? I have forgotten his name. And what did they say? They said the same thing. We really don't think that 3 Rafales have been shot down. What did the Rafale company say? The numbers don't match.
They said 1 maybe, and they also not a combat. They said maybe it was a technical incident that actually.
He said high altitude operation, maybe 1.
Right.
And that's all. And that also they withdrew, but let's assume they were right. 1 aircraft. And how many did we shoot on the first time itself?
13, 14. I don't know what it was.
13 aircraft totally. And on the first wave, we had shot down close to 5 aircraft, which included the F-16s and JF-17, and 1 high-value target. High-value target means an airborne early warning and control system aircraft, which has a radar on top and can look inside your territory. And they are only, there are more number of AWACS with Pakistan than we have. They had 6 AEWC and 4 AWAC aircraft they had, which were Chinese ZDK-03. And Indians have only 5. That is 3 which are IL-76 based, Falcon radar, and 2 which were Netra, which are indigenous. So we had 5 where they had 10, which means they had 2:1 superiority only in this one area. But we have neutralized it. Thoda kam kar diya. And also government has ordered more AWACS now. Which will probably come up in the next 4 or 5 years.
Which are some of the countries that are doing the AWACS?
See, the AWACS, Americans, Russians, Chinese, French. So these are the countries that are actively involved in, and especially the Americans and Chinese and Russians.
Right.
They have their own AWACS system. ZDK-03 is a Chinese system, which I was mentioning to you.
Yeah. And And of course, I think
And
one
even
of-
Swedish, like that Saab 2000
right.
aircraft, it has a Swedish system. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think one of the highlights, at least for me personally, was how we went in and we crippled their airfields during Operation Sindoor. I think that was just insane.
My smile comes whenever we talk of operations. Did you notice that? Yeah, actually, we had hit close to 11 to 12 airfields, starting from Skardu, Noor Khan, Murid. Rahim Ya Khan was in ICU, like Prime Minister says, no, wo to ICU mein pada hua hai.
Correct.
And then we were looking at Jacobabad. Jacobabad, we hit the hangar where the F-16s are based and they are being maintained. And this is the same base which was used by the Americans earlier. If
When
you
they were
remember,
doing their
Afghanistan missions.
sorties.
Yeah. So this was the base. And that is why not everybody says America has given them $86 million for upgradation and maintenance. I'm telling you, a lot of that would be also getting the aircraft that have been hit back to state. Because they won't like to say their F-16s have been shot down in the air or F-16s have been hit on the ground. वो कहेंगे क्या जहाज है यार, ऊपर भी इसको नीचे भी पिटा है. And then Bholari we hit. Bholari had airborne early warning and control system that with the radar, Saab 2000 in the hangar. They also had other, maybe F-16 or JF-17 inside the hangar. There were 5 to 6 personnel which also died, which was not intentional. We are not there to kill their pilots or their technicians. But we did hit that aircraft in the base itself. And there were many other. Sargodha, when we hit Sargodha, the bombs were very close to Kirana Hills, where they store their nuclear weapons, and the tremors were felt in US. They were so worried that we have hit the place, and tomorrow if any radiation leak takes place, and some people, say, I'm not sure which is right or wrong, but they speculate that the Americans also have their certain amount of asla, which is kept here. And they were quite worried about that also. And probably that was also one of the reasons why they were pressurizing both the countries. We waited till the time Pakistanis came to us, and we did not aim actually to escalate and go into a Russia-Ukraine war or go into Gaza attacks or something like that.
But were you actually at that time a little fearful that things could actually have got a lot worse? While at the peak, when those 2-3 days were happening, were you fearful that things could get a lot worse?
It was the other way around. Dil mange more. I was wondering, यार थोड़ी छेती हो गया बंद, कुछ और ठोकना था. That kind of feeling. I'm sorry I use this language, but this is
like a true
warrior.
Yeah.
So, but I think it was the right time. You know why it was the right time? See, it is 4 years going to be nearly in February, and Russia has still not been able to get Donbass.
So true.
And it is already 2 years plus in Gaza, and still the Israelis are cribbing that वो मार रहे हैं हमको, हमारा एक soldier injured हो गया. And they're talking of disarmament, and they want the Pakistanis to come there. And Munir साहब के लिए एक side खाई है तो दूसरी side खूह है. खूह in Punjabi means kuwa. So one side, both sides, deep sea, and one side is devil in the deep sea, that kind of stuff. So now I personally think it was the right time before we escalated to such a level and we caused such debilitating damage onto the Pakistanis that they would have been forced to react. They wouldn't have been able to show their faces. Now at least they keep doing this in the sports field and make themselves happy without telling the losses that they have undertaken. In 1971 war, we lost 65 aircraft. On the higher side, I'm saying it. Lower side is 45. So somewhere around, maybe even if we take 60, 65 aircraft we have lost. Pakistanis, I'm saying on the lower side also, have lost 75 aircraft. Nobody questioned us in the 71 war ke baad. Why did you lose 50, 60, 65 aircraft?
Correct.
Today, to lose a few aircraft, there is so much hellfire. So I can't understand this. Why aren't people looking at whether we were able to achieve our aim, whether we were able to achieve our aim in 88 hours, whether we were able to get the Pakistanis on their knees within this 90-hour window and still stop the war, facing less damage than the Pakistanis?
Agree.
Yeah, narrative building I think we need to learn from them.
Yeah, I think their PR skills are a little better than
वो तो वही करते हैं ना, वो लड़ते थोड़ा ना है. They don't fight. They're only worried about PR.
So true.
Yeah.
So true. In fact, I believe even globally, some of the firms that they hired, they paid them top dollar. But again, it was only to sugarcoat what finally happened on the ground and all of that as well. So we spoke about, of course, the shooting down of Abhinandan's plane.
But he had shot down an F-16 before.
He had shot on F-16 prior. So truly went down fighting. But Operation Balakot, in a way, was historic because it was the first time in, I think since the 71 war, perhaps, where India had actually retaliated the way it did across, the line of control and did the kind of, damage that it did. What was the morale in the forces that time? And what is your thoughts on what happened at that time?
The first thing is that we used to do operations earlier also, like Mirage 2000 strike I mentioned to you in 2002, which was also known as Kargil 2. Right. But it was never brought out. Yeah. And within the Air Force also, only those who undertook that mission and certain senior officers who were part of the chain knew about it, not the rest of the Air Force. Yeah. But here was a case where we were demonstrating it's not some commandos going across and attacking the launch sites, but it is here we are exercising our political will to say हम तुम्हारे देश के अंदर घुस रहे हैं और घुस के मार रहे हैं और बता रहे हैं कि आगे कुछ किया तो फिर घुस के मारेंगे. And we had crossed a line which we had never crossed earlier. We were telling the world that we are not going to take their nonsense anymore and that we are going to hit their target system. This was in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. It was not right next to the border. It was in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa that we attacked. And after that, I'm telling you, the pride that we used to feel, though a lot of people asked me, especially those who wanted to put down the Indian Air Force, they said, वो तो bombs कह रहे हैं कि कहीं forest में गिर गए. अरे फॉरेस्ट में गिरे होते तो would Pakistan have been so rattled that they had to launch another strike next day itself, and that we had to have an air combat and that they had to drop their weapons. But of course their weapons never reached any target. They didn't. And last thing I want to say in this, and I felt so nice that here is somebody who says, and here is a political will that clearly dispels any fear. वो बताते हैं कि हम डरते नहीं हैं और वो बताते हैं कि India has arrived. Please don't consider. When Barack Obama came to India, he says India is not coming up, it has already come up. He used some other words, but he meant the same thing. And this thing, we never knew that we have arrived. And I think this was a message that we have arrived.
100%. I think the message that we sent out to the world is that, and especially of course to Pakistan, is don't mess. Okay, because this has happened once, it's going to happen again. And as you rightly said, I think the world, stood up and took notice that this is now a changed India. This is not, the soft, quiet power that it, once was. Now there's actually, you hit us and we'll hit you back.
सूरा सो पहचानिए जो लड़े दीन के हेत पुरजा पुरजा कट मरे कबो ना छाड़ो खेत. That is very important. And I personally like Guru Gobind Singh Ji for that. And today is a day which is Veer Bal Divas. Today is a day when his younger Sahibzadas were bricked into the wall life. Oh. So it's a great day. Was that by
one of the Mughal emperors?
Mughal emperors, yeah. Aurangzeb was the emperor and Wazir Khan was the governor of Sirhind who did that. Oh.
Yeah. Symbolic day.
Symbolic day.
And of course, what is... After Operation Sindoor, what has now changed fundamentally on, let's say, across the border, the line of control? What do you think has fundamentally changed after Operation Sindoor?
Pakistan is protecting itself. Have you noticed that they've shifted all their terror camps from front into Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and beyond in different parts of Punjab, deeper, much deeper. Right. So what are they doing? They are not allowing us the leeway that within close to the border, we will be hitting them as soon as the war starts. We have weapons, 450 kilometers Brahmas. Wherever Pakistan, entire Pakistan is 400 kilometers in width.
We will find you no matter where you go.
Wherever you are. You are in our range. You are on our radar. Okay, that is one. Number two I have found is they are self-protecting themselves by saying we are giving protection to Saudi Arabia by signing mutual defense pact with them. And now they are planning the same mutual defense pact with Bangladesh If BNP comes to power, probably it may not take place. But if they had their way, within UNIS time, before even the elections take place, they would like to have a mutual defense pact so that they can open up a second front, because they are not going to get back from doing any terrorist activity. They are going to do terrorist activity in India. They are going to try to destabilize, and they are going to reorganize their Jaish-e-Mohammed, Lashkar-e-Taiba and Hizbul Mujahideen. And when that happens and Indian Op Sindoor starts, now they have another front which they can open from Bangladesh.
Right. And I think we'll probably know how things playing out in like maybe in under 2 months from now. I think Feb 12th or something are the elections in Bangladesh.
12th Feb 2026 is the elections.
Yeah. Does this agreement with Saudi Arabia bother you in terms of what Pakistan
Not
won
at
and
all.
done?
Not at all. Do you think Saudi Arabia is ever going to attack us? What will Saudi Arabia do? It has mostly Western equipment and Western weapon systems. Even if they give it to Pakistan, if it's on the eve of the war, it's not going to help them much unless it is the same F-16 aircraft, which they don't have. So they will fly. So I'm not really bothered. What are they going to give? Nothing. They will never send their soldiers to fight India. India is too big. India has arrived. And secondly, and very importantly, Pakistan is the one which is going to send 25,000 soldiers over there. Pakistan is the one which is going to position some aircraft and some naval vessels over there. And then only will they get the money from Saudi Arabia for the deal that they have struck in Mutual Defense Pact. Right. So it's not going to help them. But Bangladesh is a different kettle of fish.
Yeah. Well, let's keep our fingers crossed and hope that things don't get out of control over there, because we have some weaknesses there, and they have some weaknesses there as well. There are chicken necks on both sides.
What is the best thing India did? We called Mutaki. And day before yesterday, I was on some channel, and one of the other side leaders was talking, and he was saying कि अरे मुताकी को कैसे बुला लिया? आपने तो तालिबान को बुला लिया घर में. What is the state of Pakistan today? What is the state of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa? What is the state of northwestern part of Baluchistan? Correct. It's all destabilized. Sure. Every day Pakistanis are dying. This is the deadliest year for the Pakistani soldiers. Right. They have a problem in Baluchistan, which has declared freedom on May 15th, if I remember right.
When the train incident also happened, I think that was
seven train incidents. And then there is Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. POK is also started boiling. Punjab, Ladakh, the way they came up on streets. Now, if they send their army to Gaza, things are going to become worse in Punjab also. People don't like them much. And that is why Munir is self-protecting himself by making himself CDF and also making himself immune to any legal action subsequently.
Right.
His bad days are begun.
Yeah. No, that's just sad. And unfortunate, but like I said, I hope Pakistan, the people of Pakistan, don't have to pay the price, of that.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
Let's keep our fingers crossed.
We have nothing with them.
Yeah. So true. Okay, so we have a rapid fire. Some of these you've already answered in some form, but the first thing that comes to your mind, one word, one sentence, we'll jump into that. So first up, single engine or twin engine? What do you?
Twin engine.
More? Yeah, you already spoke about that. Speed or stealth? What will win
Stealth.
wars today? One quality every Air Force officer must have.
Nidarta, fearlessness.
Love that. Yeah. The Rafale or the Su-30 MKIs, different beast, same battle. Which would you prefer?
Rafale.
Yeah. One aircraft,
currently, before the Super Su-30 upgrade.
Okay. One aircraft that changed the IAF forever.
MiG-21 and NAT.
Okay.
If you can give me one more.
Okay. The most demanding aircraft to fly mentally.
21, MiG-21.
More than the 23 also?
More than the 23.
Okay. Is technology today reducing pilot skill or amplifying it?
It's improving his ability to react to situations, but at the same time, it is making ease of comfort much better.
Yeah, love that. And one word to describe flying at night.
Challenging.
Did you end up doing a lot of night sorties as well?
My squadron was Night Strike Squadron, the one that I commanded. And we were forced, they were told us 30%, but I used to love fly to 40%. We used to fly across the night, 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, early morning. And I loved that. And then as a CO, you have to come back and still fly the day because you have to get the aircraft. The aircraft must have flown for the day before it goes for night.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Of course, we spoke about drones. Are drones today a bigger threat than fighter jets?
They are strategic disruptors, but fighter jockeys will still be in play for the next 30 years.
Yeah, you mentioned that. One myth civilians believe about air wars.
It's all biggles. Close combat.
Yeah, which in today's time is impossible.
It's
I
all
think you
beyond
mentioned
reason.
once that if close combat is happening, you're already shot. I mean, it's not possible. वो dog fight का तो era ही खत्म हो
Era ही
गया.
खत्म हो
Yeah,
गया.
yeah, agreed. One habit that every fighter pilot must have.
Physical fitness.
Yeah, very trying.
I
very
still
trying
run
secret.
2 to 11 kilometers a day.
Amazing.
2 if I'm not in the mood. 11,
Wow. And you're pushing your mid 60s now.
65, yeah.
Yeah, love it.
Does it show, actually?
Super fit.
Okay,
Super fit.
great.
Is ego basically an asset or a liability in the cockpit?
Ego will get you killed.
So liability for sure then.
Yes, liability.
There
There are old pilots and there are bold pilots, but there are no old and bold pilots.
No old and bold pilots. Love that. A better pilot, will he be someone who's calm or someone who's aggressive?
Absolutely calm. Because there are multiple threats, there are challenging environment, and your decision has to be calmly taken.
Okay, let's take some in pertaining to the Indian Air Force. One thing that the Indian Air Force does exceptionally well.
Family environment.
Right.
Brilliant.
Camaraderie, culture.
Camaraderie,
Yeah.
culture.
Love it.
Looks after your families when you are ahead.
One challenge that the IAF needs to solve.
Declining squadron numbers, fighter squadron numbers,
An aging of fleet perhaps. As well.
aging of fleet.
Yeah. Indigenous aircraft, is it emotion or strategy?
It's both. It's emotion as it is a pride for us, and it is strategy because unless we have our own aircraft, we will never be challenged, never be subdued, never be coerced. So you must have our own aircraft.
We must. Yeah. The Atmanirbharta aspect is
Atmanirbharta
karna
is karna hai.
Okay. Air bases or aircraft, which has more significance?
Aircraft.
Given a choice, would you choose the same career again?
Choose the same?
Career again.
There's no doubt in my mind. I would love to go back and sit in the cockpit. They don't let me. They're saying you become too old.
Yeah.
Do I look old?
Not at all. Yeah. One word that defines life in uniform.
Honor.
Love that. Discipline or motivation, which matters more?
Discipline.
Were you a early morning PT kind of person or a late night planner?
Early morning. Today morning I got up at 3 o'clock, around 3, maybe 15 minutes earlier.
Fantastic.
Because I had multiple things to do,
Right.
including your.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. One habit that young aspirants must start today, and these are aspirants who are applying for the IAF.
Dedication.
Okay. And one habit that aspirants must quit in case they want to make a career in the Air Force.
Getting scared.
Yeah. So the fearlessness is very
Fearlessness
important,
is very important.
and last 2 or 3 questions here. What's one of the toughest things about leadership in uniform?
Righteousness, path of righteousness. Because that conflicts with sometimes the ideals of warfare.
Right. And of course, while you said this is non-negotiable, if not the Air Force, which career would you have chosen?
No other career. Only Air Force. My mind is pretty clear.
Yeah. And if there was one word to define you as a person, what would that one word be?
Khalsa.
Love that. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. That is our rapid fire. So thank you for all those answers over there as well. So as we move towards wrapping up on our conversation, let's talk about something that's very hotly debated right now, and also something that you've been asked to make a lot of appearances on, which is on the Eastern Front and what is happening with Bangladesh right now. What really is going on, and what must India be wary of on that side?
It is my personal opinion that since 1970, because I've stayed there 3 years, I've interacted with all the parties, whether it's Awami League, BNP, Jamaat-e-Islami, Jatiya Party, who's not heard at all, General Arshad's party,
Right.
and also have visited virtually the entire country, all across from Chittagong hill tracks to Rangpur division. In fact, one of our MiG-21 aircraft fell there, crashed at that period of time. So I had the real privilege to see Bangladesh from inside.
Right.
From 1971, Pakistan has been making all attempts that they get back Bangladesh, even if it is a vassal state for them.
Yeah.
So when Bangladesh burns, it is of advantage to them. When there is Kattarwad, fundamentalism in Bangladesh, it is of advantage to them.
Yeah.
At that period of time, also I noticed that the Jamaat-e-Islami party had close links with the ISI, the intelligence agency of Pakistan. They funded them, they gave them the ideology, and they supported them in different fora.
Yeah.
It was very evident to me. Then the other thing is, if you look at what are the systems that are being destroyed today, first is any connection with liberation war. Right. Whether it is the father of the nation, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's house, or any other symbols. Right. The second is secularism. They are hitting at secularism, and they are ensuring that the minorities are getting targeted, which will provoke India. And there has been some provocation also. The idea is to provoke India. And then if India responds aggressively towards Bangladesh, or within our own country, there are rights, Hindu-Muslim rights, then Munir's statement comes true, Hindu-Muslims cannot stay together. And this, from your channel, my request to all and everybody is that let us not fall into the trap of Pakistan. Okay. Third is to destroy all the Awami League structures. They even banned Awami League. In addition to that, they have put lots of their leaders in jail, and they even killed some leaders. Right. And last, if you look at is the way they are going about it systematically, step by step, where the strategic alignment since Yunus has come has changed from India to China and Pakistan. And in addition to that, they even had a meeting in June in Kunming, where there was a meeting between the foreign secretaries of China, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. So they want to get into this trilateral. And lastly, their economy. They are destroying the economy of Bangladesh so that they become dependent on China and Pakistan. It is Pakistan's strategy. ISI is helping. It's not that they plan everything. It is that whenever an opportunity comes, they exploit it. For example, the reservations for freedom fighters and their families, they exploited the moment, turned it into a fundamental issue as unemployment for the youth, caught on with the youth, and they now got more youth into fundamentalism than being a secular nation and looking after Bangladesh's growth. So today, Bangladesh is at crossroads. But also I feel that Yunus' position is getting day and day weaker, especially when Tariq Rahman has come. BNP has been with pro-Pakistan, though General Zia himself had proclaimed on 24th March 1971, liberation of Bangladesh, before the actual liberation took place. And he was a freedom fighter. But after 4 years, after the liberation war, when Mujib was killed, after that, when he himself came to power, his orientation slowly started going back towards Muslim Brotherhood and Pakistan. So when it is happening, but at the same time, it is a democratically oriented party. It doesn't want fundamentalism because mostly Bangladesh, normal man is an intellectual. He's a Bengali first, then a Muslim. And he is a Bengali Muslim rather than any way around. But now what is happening is that they want to turn it only into a Muslim because these are the ones who were in 1947 also with Pakistan, Jinnah, and in 1971 they were with Razakars, and they were involved in large-scale killing, looting, as well as doing wrong things with women, if you remember, in lakhs and millions, and 10 million had come to India at that time as refugees. So they are not truly Bangladeshis. They are hardliners. And BNP, even if may not be pro-India, they may be more pro-China, but they will at least not be anti-minorities and anti-India as much as it is today.
Yeah, and you're right. You spoke about ruining the economy. Like Bangladesh is doing well. Per capita
fastest
income,
growing rate in South Asia for quite some time.
Right, their apparel industry is insane. Like people, and of course, we're in the heart of Noida, and people say Noida factories, and India's t-shirt making hub is Tirupur and Noida. But what Bangladesh had created was far ahead in terms of what they were doing for some of the biggest apparel brands. And many of these factories had Indian managers, or at least even MNC management. Sab bhag gaye. There's no one there now. They're like, there's nothing left here or no reason for us to be here.
Absolutely. So when they dent the economy, then the youth get unemployed and they get more motivated towards becoming fundamentalists. And that is what Pakistan's aim is. Destroy them so that they become dependent on them as a vassal state.
So sad.
So sad. And it's such a beautiful country.
Yeah. And of course, like you said, you spent many years
3 years there.
Yeah.
And I had lovely interactions. They used to call me General Aurora when I used to go to villages because he was the one who signed the surrenders. Yeah, and I used to be really, all the ladies used to call me as brother, Indian brother. I mean, I have phenomenal connection.
And hence it pains you even more to see what's really happening.
What's really happening there, especially attacking the Hindus, not done. Tragic, it's not in Bengali culture.
Agreed. 100% agree. Right. So as we do come towards wrapping up, let's talk about another incident that happened recently and was with one of our aircrafts at an air show. Heart to heart, do you think it was pilot error, or do you think it was perhaps maybe the equipment that was at failure?
Okay, if you ask a pilot that whether the other pilot has made an error, he squirms on his seat and he doesn't want to commit on anything like this, especially when the pilot is not available to defend himself. Justify himself. Now here I want to tell you 2-3 things.
Sure.
If you permit me that. Only 2 accidents have taken place in LCA.
Right.
From which time? 2001, when it flew first time.
Right.
So 24 years, only 2.
Yeah.
JF-17 first time flew 2003. 5 accidents.
Okay.
Secondly, there was one engine failure in 2024 March with G404 engine.
Right.
Okay. Thirdly, I went recently, I was mentioning to you, to my squadron, 60th squadron anniversary, 18 squadron flying bullets, and they are now LCA squadron. All pilots have lovely words for this aircraft. And when I saw it also, when I looked at the cockpit, I saw it was beautifully ergonomically designed and everything looked right to me.
Right.
And what they tell me is that in maneuvering, agility, top of the line. This is the only one of the very few aircraft that does a negative G turn. Normally when you turn, the positive G is like this.
Correct.
This does a negative G turn. So yes. Now, why do we do international air shows? Because we want to showcase our capability. We want to tell the world India has arrived.
Agreed.
And secondly, we want to sell our air.
Of course.
And, we have had 23,622 crores worth of exports in 2024-25. This year is going to be 30,000 crores and more.
Correct.
And we are now looking at a target of 50,000 crores. Yeah. And if we have to achieve it, we have to sell aircraft. Correct. And that too LCA. Yeah. So when we display the aircraft on a static display, nobody wants to see. They say, "Ye to toy rakha hua." Right. So you have to fly it. And this is not the first time it has taken part in international air displays. It has taken part in many displays. I don't even know the number of countries. Right. There are several countries.
Yeah. And similar maneuvers have been done in the past.
Similar maneuvers. And it is a pre-planned maneuver that is done.
Right.
But when I have looked at that maneuver, either there was sudden loss of thrust when he does, when he's doing from an outside turn, he inverts the aircraft like that. And then you see a sudden loss of thrust. He's leveled off, but he's unable to control the mush. And it goes onto the ground. So probably it could be engine failure, the loss of thrust, or probably it could be a maneuver that has gone wrong. Okay, when we are looking at that also, then the question arises, why do we do such maneuvers at low altitudes? If we do at high altitudes, nobody is watching. They won't even know what you're doing.
Correct.
And jo darshak hai, wo to niche hai. So you have to do it. Every country does it. It's not us. In fact, there was a F-16 crash in August in Redom Airbase, where Major Masiej, he was a Polish hot rod pilot, whilst doing a barrel roll like this, went into the ground. We couldn't recover it in time. So these mistakes happen once in a blue moon. Right. It doesn't happen. But I'm not saying it is pilot error because it's too early to say that. Okay. Only the court of inquiry can tell that. Okay. The second thing and very important thing is there were 3 air show accidents in this year, not all fighters. And in last 13 years in the US, there have been 174 air show accidents or incidents, but not fighters, all fighters. There's some fighters, some like that. Pakistan had one they were doing a lot of mimicry, right?
Right.
After this, in 2020, F-16, if I remember right, flown by Wing Commander Akram. In an air display practice, he went into the ground. I'm a good pilot. We all respect each other. And we never, humiliated or used dirty words which they have used or things like that. That pilot did his best. That day was not his. So, and there are so many incidents, whichever country you take up, there are so many incidents in air displays where...
No, you're right. I mean, I was once in Dayton, Ohio. And Dayton, Ohio is, of course, the home of the Wright brothers. And they have a U.S. Aviation museum there. And in fact, there's one question that I have.
I have gone there.
You have, right? Isn't it
I
amazing?
couldn't visit when I went to US.
It's amazing, right?
Amazing.
Do you wonder why India may not have done, a good job of capturing, aviation history, building museums, like that? Have we actually taken steps?
There is an aviation museum which has been created by the Air Force. In fact, I came to know about it only a few weeks back. So I'm going to go and visit that.
Okay.
When a foreigner had come, a Netherlands guy had come, and we were in the same seminar.
Right.
And he was telling me, can I go to your Air Force museum? So I said, it's open for all. Because then I quickly looked on my Google chat GPT and found, yes, it is there.
Yeah.
And he went next day and saw that. So there is one, but of course, it's not like Washington, D.C. or not like Ohio.
Yeah.
And I've seen both.
Yeah. Dayton, Ohio was phenomenal. I think just, the way, and we couldn't even finish the whole thing because they had 7 sections and I think we did like 4 or 5.
Yeah.
But fascinating, in terms of they had, the bombers that dropped the bomb in Hiroshima. They had all those glasses.
Little boy and fat man.
They had the glasses that were there, for the people who flew that mission from, they were going from China to bomb Japan.
Yeah.
And there was, I think, 30 pilots. And it was a one-way mission, right? They were just going to go fly and they were not even expected to come back.
Doolittle raid.
That is the one. And as they would keep dying, they would keep popping they would turn the glass over. And I think there's only one glass that's turned over now. So, of course, all of them or many of them did make it back. Yeah. But as they were passing by virtue of natural causes, passing by natural causes, I think they would turn the glass upside down. So now there's only one glass that was left, turned upwards.
Beautiful, no? Touching.
Yeah.
But what did they cause also was phenomenal. They used to do those raids, fire bombing raids in Tokyo and then the nuclear weapons. So,
yeah, that's true. Of course, while we were also talking about some of the global stuff, did movies like Top Gun and all have an impact on you as well when you
Maverick?
were flying? Well, first Top Gun, the original, and then Maverick, of course, now.
Yeah. The first one, Top Gun, I was in MiG-27, MiG-23 squadron.
Okay.
And phenomenal. I had just got married. Phenomenal. But then my CO told me, his name was Bhattacharya. He's no more now. He told me, Angat, देखता, ख्याल रखना. अभी तूने movie देखी. I told you, there are old pilots and there are bold. Yeah. But there are no old and bold pilots. Yeah, but that gave me tremendous encouragement. In fact, we all had a little swagger when we walked like Tom Cruise, Nice. And then, as luck would have it, I went to our own Top Gun school, TACD, Tactics and Air Combat Development.
Where is that in India?
It used to be in Jamnagar then, now it is in Gwalior. And I was there as the youngest instructor, like I was telling you.
Fantastic.
T Club in charge, but fly 3 combat missions a day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So in case you didn't know that, we have our own Top Gun in the house today and Top Gun instructor. And of course, like I said, this has been a phenomenal conversation. And the amazing part is that after you stepped down from the Air Force, you did not choose a path in commercial aviation like many would do, but you decided to go back and choose the path of education and teaching youngsters. What was your motivation behind that?
See, I passed all the airline transport pilot license exams with very high numbers, 90%. I plugged in only one communications, which is practical test here. Then again, I gave it, again passed in that with very high numbers. Right. And now I had choice, dichotomy, whether I should go for aviation, very high paying, of course. Starting job 3.5 lakhs. And the other was education. $75,000 is what Amity University offered. And only one thing came into my mind. Throughout my days in Air Force, I've loved flying. I've kicked the tire, lit the fire. I've flown most fighter aircraft, had pleasure flying sorties in Jaguar, Sukhois, Mirages.
Right.
And I've also flown transport attack helicopters. I was there part of attack helicopter tactics, formulating it. So everything I've done, but I haven't given back to my country. That was for security of the nation. Yes,
Right.
You're doing it, but you're loving it, no?
Right.
And that's the time I felt that if my communication skills are okay, and if my leadership qualities I can impart onto the youth that is coming up, especially the ones that I found that today are more towards materialism, and whether they can be brought back to start understanding the values and empower them with skills that they don't fall in their lives. And that is where I kept, I said, I have no choice. 75,000 jobs, what? I'm getting fantastic pension from Indian Air Force, and that too tax-free. So I did talk to Atul Chauhan ji, who's the boss of, he's the boss of Noida Amity University.
Right.
He had about 45-second interview, and that's that. My journey in education started. I had some really interesting and challenging opportunities provided to me. But if you go and ask any of my students, they all said only one thing. We loved his Josh in the class, and we felt motivated. And every class used to end with Jai Hind.
Love that.
And that kind of a feeling comes in, And then you see, yes, they are as patriotic and as loving to their nation. It's only that nobody's lit the passion of fire into them.
Amazing. I agree 100%. I think, today the youth is so inspired by Instagram and YouTube that it actually needs real world heroes to come into classrooms and actually show them the path. And thank you for doing that as well.
I was not a real world hero, but definitely I felt that the Air Force gave me the opportunity. I can never forget my Air Force.
Yeah.
And I'm always thankful to them. Whatever I do, I get reminded. ये quality तो मैंने Air Force से सीखी है.
So true. So true. Then, like you said, you cut your veins. It's not red blood, but blue blood.
It's blue.
Yeah, I love that. Well, like I said, we had a small set of gifts for you. Thank you for being here, of course, today. So I see you love ties. So this is a tie from the house of Shantanu Nikhil.
Wow.
So that is something that we had.
Thank you very much.
Also, I know you love writing and a passion in that space.
And
so,
good that you gave me a navy blue tie. Yeah.
And this is a pen again from Shantanu Nikhil. So something that they had created, and I'm sure you'd like to write some of your thoughts and memoirs with that as well.
Okay.
Of course, we had you on the podcast, so you must have your Let's Chat with GB souvenir mug. So for your morning chai or coffee.
He was telling me that you don't give anything commercially, because I never asked him also. He was just telling me that on his own.
Right.
And but you're giving me so many good memories,
Small
No,
tokens from
nothing
our side
can
as
beat
well.
this. Nothing can beat this.
And this is, in fact, something we created very recently. So, in fact, you will be featuring on these cards as well. So, all the people who've come on the Let's Chat with GB podcast. So, we've had these cards created where, we have their episodes and what were some of the key things that they said. And then you scan the QR and you jump on to watch the episodes. So, just a small collectible from our side for all the 33 amazing guests that we've had. And as we keep adding, of course, like I said, your card will be coming here as well. So, just a little bit over there as well. Commodore Bahal, like I said, thank you so very much, for coming out today and being a part of the podcast. Phenomenal, insights, and I'm sure like some of the stuff that you mentioned will blow our audience away. Let us know what you guys and girls, really thought of this one, and if you would like to have any more questions, send them our way so we can, forward them to Commodore Bahal as well. And like I said, once again, thank you so very much, and it was a pleasure to have you here.
Jai Hind.
Jai Hind.